The morning the HOA padlocked my iron gate, I signed the state budget with the same pen. I wish that were a joke. It wasn't. I was halfway through my first sip of porch coffee when I heard the clink of chain against the stone posts my dad and I stacked 25 summers ago. Fog hung in the pines. The flag on the front balcony snapped once, then settled. Two men in orange safety vests, neither from the road, crew-looped a chain through the gate like they were roping a steer. A woman in a blazer, bright as a stop sign, supervised with a clipboard and a tight smile. "Excuse me?" I said, still in my house shoes. "Can I help you folks?" "You can help by paying what you owe," the woman said. She pronounced "oh" like it was rotten fruit. "I'm Marjorie, president of the Elk Ridge Homeowners Association. You have 6 months of delinquent dues plus fines. We've issued warnings, certified letters, door tags. You ignored them." I stared at her, then at the padlock. "Ma'am, I've lived on this mountain longer than you've had that haircut. I pay my bills." She slid a paper through the bars. "Notice of violation, lien recorded, and pending association foreclosure. Your grass is 2 inches over spec. Your porch light is a non-approved wattage. Your truck was parked on the gravel apron overnight. The dues are modest, but you have accrued daily non-compliance fines." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You're padlocking my home over a porch bulb?" "Rules are rules," Marjorie said, with the serene cruelty of someone born for clipboards. "And yours is a mansion. High-value lots get higher fines. That's in the bylaws." My phone buzzed. Staff. A reminder. 9A.M. Budget signing. Noon with the Sheriff's Association, 2:30 at the Capitol for a veterans housing bill. I glanced at the gate, at the men in vests, at my own front yard River Rock path. Hummingbirds at the feeder, my father's flag shadowing the entry. A knot tightened behind my ribs. "My wife's inside," I said. "She's getting our granddaughter ready for kindergarten." "I need that gate open, and you need to be current," Marjorie said. "Or we escalate." Behind her, a black SUV idled, window down, hair sprayed to the heavens. A woman I recognized from neighborhood gossip people called her a Karen before that was impolite. Lifted her phone and filmed like she'd been hired to document the downfall. The gentleman next to her wore aviators and a smirk. The HOA patrol, I realized, except the badges were plastic and the power was very real. Inside, Linda opened the door and called, "Honey, why are there men at our gate?" I took the paper. I scanned it. And then, in a spot of small print near the bottom, I saw it. Payment must be remitted via HOA portal within 10 days of notice. Subject to treasurer approval. Treasurer's email, treasurer@elkridgehoa.org. Name, Benjamin S. Toll. Ben Toll, my old high school teammate. He'd run a roofing business that folded, then somehow landed on the HOA board. He'd waved at me from town parades, all teeth and elbows. A memory hit, last Christmas. Ben at the block party, grumbling that the mansion on the ridge made his little place look shabby. Marjorie nodding, promising standards. Another, the HOA's new security car crawling past at midnight, shining the spotlight across our porch swing until Linda closed the curtains. I set the paper on the porch rail and looked Marjorie dead in the eye. "I'm calling the sheriff." "You can," she said, "but this is civil. Sheriff can't help. You should know that." I did know that. I also knew the sheriff first name basis and how fast he'd drive up our switchback road if I asked. But I let it sit a moment. I let the anger bloom and crest. Then I pressed it down into something cold and sharp. "Here's what's going to happen," I said quietly. "You're going to remove that lock. I'm going to take my granddaughter to school. Then I'll drive to town and settle whatever nonsense you've cooked up." Marjorie's smile widened. "We'll remove it when the portal reflects payment in full, plus the emergency lock fee, plus today's compliance inspection fee." The Karen in the SUV tittered. "Maybe next time you mow your yard," she said. "You never mean for your voice to change." Mine did. It went flat. Authority bled in. "What's your last name, Marjorie?" She blinked. "Hollings and you, recording over there." The woman pushed her sunglasses down. Darla Perkins. Freedom of information. Hey, you'll be very free with information today, I said. Marjorie, Darla, Ben told the board, I'll see you in the clubhouse at 3 p.m. Bring the bylaws. Bring your minutes. Bring your treasurer records. And bring a real attorney, because Linda put a hand on my arm. Soft, honey. She said, voice calm, don't forget the budget signing. Right, the budget signing. At the Capitol, where I stood last month and asked for patience and pride from the people who elected me to keep the lights on and the roads paved, where I had promised fairness. Where, if I were being honest, nobody expected me to care about HOA drama, except this wasn't just drama. This was our home. I took my phone out of my pocket. I thumbed a number. The Tahoe at the edge of our drive rolled forward. Blue stripe glinting on white Howard County Sheriff had been headed up the ridge anyway, it turned out, because one of our elderly neighbors had called about strange men chaining gates. The deputy stepped out. He touched his hat. Governor, he said, careful to keep it even. We've got some concerns from the neighborhood. I glanced at Marjorie. Her eyes went wide. Darla's phone lowered a fraction. I didn't want to do it like this, but they'd chosen the terms. I nodded to the deputy, then to the men in vests. Unlock it, I said. Now. Marjorie's voice shrank. We can't, until the portal. The deputy cleared his throat. Ma'am, while this is civil, padlocking a primary residence gate without notice can create a safety hazard. Fire code's real particular up here with these dry pines. He looked at me again, almost apologetic. Governor, sir, you want us to stand by while they unlock? Stand by, I said, and record everything. A hummingbird zipped between us. The world went quiet. Even the flag seemed to hold its breath. The men in vests looked at each other, then at Marjorie. She nodded, quick and stiff. The chain slithered free. The padlock came off. I walked to the gate and swung it open. The iron groaned, an old familiar ache. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder, the way he'd squeezed when I graduated, when I married Linda. When we laid him to rest on the hill with the view he loved, 3 o'clock, I repeated, clubhouse. And if you want to film something useful, film this. Sometimes the folks who enforce the rules need reminding that they serve the same community the rest of us do. I'll bring the reminder. I picked up my granddaughter's pink backpack. We loaded into the truck. As I eased down the gravel, Linda reached across and squeezed my hand. Don't let them drag you into ugliness, she said. I won't, I told her. But inside, I made a promise. They were not going to touch our home again. By noon, word had spread from the feed store to the diner. Elk Ridge loved a spectacle almost as much as it loved a pancake breakfast. And a showdown at the HOA clubhouse was better than both. The clubhouse itself sat by the community lake, cedar building with a big stone fireplace and a mural of elk that looked startled by their own antlers. On the corkboard by the door, flyers for yoga, a lost cat named Muffin, and a reminder about approved holiday lights duration, December 1st, January 5th.
8.
The board formed a line behind a folding table like a panel on a game show. Marjorie wore the same blazer. Ben, the treasurer, wore a tie that tried to be serious. Darla lurked with her phone, thumbs ready. A handful of neighbors trickled in, folks who'd borrowed sugar, folks who'd waved from lawn chairs, folks who'd once asked me for a selfie and then complained we needed more speed bumps. I didn't bring a lawyer. I brought a folder. Inside, receipts, emails, 2 printed bank statements with the HOA portal payments circled in blue, and 1 letter, the kind you don't send unless you've got the goods on. My official stationery. Let's start simple. You say, I didn't pay the dues. Ben lifted a sheet. The portal shows 0 payments since March. I slid my printouts across. That's odd, because here's my bank showing monthly automatic payments to Elk Ridge HOA Services LLC cleared. Confirmation numbers. And here I held up my phone, tapped a screenshot, are the portal emails acknowledging receipt. Marjorie didn't blink. The portal is the single source of truth. If the portal says you didn't pay, then you didn't pay. Even if my bank did, I said. Even if, she said. A murmur ran through the room. Earl from down the hill, retired lineman, hands like hammers, leaned forward. Marge, that don't sound right. Ben cleared his throat. There's been a migration. We moved the portal from HOA Cloud to DoesPro. Some payments didn't transfer, so the balance is reset. Did you notify homeowners? I asked. Marjorie flipped a page. We sent a bulletin. It's not our fault if some people don't read. Earl scratched his jaw. I didn't see no bulletin. Either had I. But I didn't chase that. I tapped the line on my bank statement. What's this Elk Ridge HOA Services LLC? Our management company, Marjorie said crisply. Formed when? I asked. She blinked. Last spring. I slid another paper across. Public records show Elk Ridge HOA Services LLC was formed in May. Registered agent, Benjamin S. Toll. I looked at Ben. That you... His tie wilted. It's a service company. We needed efficiencies. The board approved it. Minutes? I asked. Marjorie smiled. We don't have to share internal minutes. That's where you're wrong, I said, and opened the letter with the state seal. Under our state's Nonprofit Corporation Act and the HOA Transparency Act we passed last year, I watched recognition dawn in a few faces. Homeowners have the right to inspect association records, including minutes, financials, and conflicts of interest, especially when dues are paid to an entity controlled by the treasurer. Wireless phone. Zoomed in. Ben's hands went shaky. Conflict? Marjorie said lightly. Ben's just helping. He has experience with roofing. Roofing, I repeated. Right, then explain why the service fee siphoned off. From dues increased from 3% to 15% after your LLC was formed. Why late fees tripled. Why violation fines became daily accruals with no cap. Silence. Outside, a fishing line flicked over lake water. Inside, you could hear paper breathe. Linda sat behind me, calm as an oak. She squeezed my shoulder once. I kept my voice level and explained why you padlocked my gate. Fire code forbids blocking egress on hillside properties. You jeopardize safety to make a point. It was an inspection measure, Marjorie said, but her eyes darted. Let's do this the neighborly way, I said. Show us the books. Ben shuffled a stack, then stopped. Some documents are with the manager. You are the manager, I said. He swallowed. Some documents are pending reconciliation. Turned a page in my folder and set down copies of checks to Elk Ridge HOA Services LLC written by half a dozen homeowners' names. I knew, accompanied by notes. For walkway violation, for mailbox color, for yard art. Several had cash only scribbled on receipts. Earl spoke again, louder. You been cashing folks' checks, Ben? Ben raised both hands. Everything is accounted for. Prove it, I said. Marjorie's smile snapped. You think because you're the governor you can barge in, and I think because I'm a homeowner, and because I helped write the law you're violating, I can ask for the truth. I let the next words land like a gavel. And yes, I'm the governor. Which means I know exactly how the Attorney General reads the word. Fiduciary. I know how a judge hears. Self-dealing. I know how the older folks on fixed incomes in this. Room feel when a clipboard tells them their birdhouse is non-compliant, and it'll be $20 a day until they paint it beige. Across the room, Mrs. Franklin, widow, sharp as a tack, memory like a courthouse ledger, lifted a trembling hand. They fined me $500 for the ceramic rooster on my porch, she said. Said it scared the deer. The room turned, as one to Marjorie. Order, Marjorie said, though there was no order to be had. We're adjourned. No, I said, standing. We're not. I slid the final paper forward. A simple, brutal notice of investigation request already drafted, the blanks ready for names. Here's what happens next. 1. You release the padlock fee, the inspection fee, and every dubious charge on my account. 2. You provide, within 72 hours. Full financials for the last 2 years, bank statements, invoices, vendor lists, minutes, conflicts. 3. You halt all foreclosures and daily accruals till those records are reviewed by an independent auditor selected by homeowners, not by your LLC. Marjorie's jaw tightened. You don't have authority over this association. I have authority over fraud, I said. But more importantly, we have something you seem to have forgotten. I gestured to the room. A community. Earl stood. Then Mrs. Franklin. Then Carlos, who coaches Little League. Then Cheryl from the library. One by one, chairs scraped. They didn't crowd. They didn't shout. They just stood. It was the quiet kind of power, the kind that doesn't need a microphone. Darla's phone wavered. She lowered it. Marge, she whispered, maybe we should, you know? Release the fees, at least. Ben wiped his forehead. We can reconcile, he croaked. Good, I said. Start with ripping up that lien. Marjorie pressed her lips together so hard the color left them. Fine, she said. But the grass will mow the grass, I said. I'll even lower the porch bulb to your approved wattage. But you'll stop treating neighbors like trespassers on their own land. I gathered my papers. I looked at the elk on the wall and thought how ridiculous we'd all become. Then I turned back to the board. Tomorrow night, I said, town hall, right here. Bring everything, or I bring the state. As we walked out, Linda leaned in. You were good, she said softly. You didn't yell. I wanted to, I admitted. When Mrs. Franklin talked about that rooster, I wanted to throw their binder in the lake. She smiled. Save that for if they lie tomorrow. On the deck, the sun slid behind the pines, streaking the water like spilled honey. I could feel the ridge breathing again, all the houses letting out a breath they didn't know they'd been holding. The fight wasn't finished, but the tide had turned. By 6 the next evening, the clubhouse was standing room only. Pickup trucks lined the shoulder by the lake, flags on a few Little League magnets on most. Someone brought a crock pot of chili because in our town you don't gather without feeding people. The sheriff sat in the back, off-duty ball cap low, arms crossed. He wasn't there to intervene. He was there because he lives here too. So on the wall behind the folding table lay a stack of binders and a cheap printer. Ben hovered near it, pale. Marjorie arrived late, eyes rimmed red, blazer swapped for a cardigan that tried to look softer. Darla stood near the coffee urn, quiet for once. I didn't stand at the front. I sat with neighbors. We watched. We waited. When 7 hit, Marjorie tapped the microphone. This meeting is to provide transparency, she said, voice small. We're distributing records. They started printing bank statements. The printer groaned, paper curling under the weight of numbers. People formed a line. Earl squinted at columns like he was reading the weather. Mrs. Franklin brought a magnifier. Carlos took photos for folks who didn't have email. It felt like a bake sale for truth. 15 minutes in, a hush fell. Then a ripple, like a breeze across wheat. A payment labeled Consulting Elk Ridge HOA Services, LLC, $2,000. Another, Compliance Patrol Perkins Media, $3,500. Darla flinched. That's not, she started, then stopped.
Ow.
Her own name glowed on the page like a porch light you forgot to switch off.
What's consulting? Someone asked.
Ben swallowed. Vendor management. Explain, Earl said. Ben looked at Marjorie. She looked at the floor. We proposed stricter enforcement to improve property values, she said. We hired Darla to document violations. We hired Ben's company to manage. Efficiencies. The board approved all of it. We believed it served the community. Served who? Mrs. Franklin asked, voice steady as church bells. Because it sure didn't serve me. Man I didn't know, well-knew family at the far end. Lifted a check copy. We paid a $1,000 fine for a swing set. Said it blocked the view. We moved here for our kids to swing under pines. Ben's voice cracked. He gripped the table. The printer spat another sheet onto his shoes. We thought. We were doing good. The room sat with that. Not to excuse. But because there's a difference between malice and pride gone stupid. And you have to know what you're dealing with if you're going to fix anything. I stood, not at the front, just enough to be seen. Neighbors, I said we're not a courtroom, we're a community. But we need rules that make sense and leaders who remember who they serve. Tonight, we do 3 things. 1. We vote to suspend this board and appoint an interim committee of homeowners to audit, rewrite, and reset. 2. We cap fines and end daily accruals. 3. We adopt a common-sense compliance policy: warnings first, help your neighbor second, fines last. Marjorie lifted her head. You can't suspend us without notice.
Dialogue.
Bylaws allow. Recall. With a majority, I said, and pointed to the bylaws another neighbor had printed. Turns out a retired paralegal kept a copy in her kitchen drawer. We've got a quorum. We've got notice. We can ask for your resignation, or we can vote. The sheriff spoke from the back, not loud, not official, just a man who knows the weight of a badge. If you step down tonight, you'll earn a little grace, he said. If you cling, you'll lose a lot more than a title. Darla set her phone on the table like it weighed a pound too much. I'm sorry, she said. I got carried away. It felt important, like I was keeping things proper. I forgot about people. Ben closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked 10 years older. I resign, he said. I'll hand over everything. I'll make restitution, if the audit says I owe it. Every head turned to Marjorie. Her shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked human, tired, scared. I thought holding the line made me strong, she whispered. But I wasn't holding the line. I was holding the reins. She placed the gavel plastic bought from a party store on the table and nudged it forward. I resign. No one cheered. Not yet. We'd save celebration for after we did the work. The votes were quick, hands raised, names written. We chose a temporary committee. Earl for maintenance, Mrs. Franklin for records, Cheryl from the library. For communications, Carlos for youth and recreation. And a soft-spoken CPA named Nora who'd spent 20 years balancing books for a hospital and whose idea of a party was a well-labeled spreadsheet. Linda agreed to help with community events because that's where bridges get built over potlucks and porch concerts. We rewrote 3 rules before 9. We capped fines at $50 per incident, period. We ended the daily nonsense. We banned padlocks, chains, and any measure that made a home feel like a suspect. We created a help your neighbor clause. If someone's grass is high, you knock on the door and offer to help, or arrange teen volunteers before you even think about a citation. We didn't fix everything in a night, but we turned the wheel. As folks filed out, the lake lay black and calm, the elk mural looking, if you squinted, almost proud. The sheriff tipped his cap and slipped into the night. Darla hugged Mrs. Franklin and promised to help with the fall festival. Ben shook Earl's hand and said he'd be in tomorrow with boxers. Marjorie paused at the door. She looked at me. Governor, she said, voice hoarse, I deserve whatever's coming. But thank you for not making me small. I shook my head. You did that to yourself, I said, not unkindly. Now build yourself back. At home, Linda and I sat on the porch. The porch light, now a lower wattage, approved, apparently glowed soft over the swing. Our granddaughter slept upstairs, a sock monkey tucked under her arm. I could hear the far-off chirp of a patrol car, the true kind, not the HOA version. The flag barely moved. I thought about my father, about the day he set that flagpole and told me, you don't plant a flag to warn people off. You plant it to remind yourself who you are. Here's the simple lesson I'd offer anyone who's ever fought a clipboard. Sometimes standing up for what's right means standing calm when it would be easy to shout, means reading the fine print, gathering your neighbors, and remembering the house across the street is a home, not a file. And because you asked for honesty like we talk on the porch, it also felt good to win. Not for me, though. That padlock stung. For Mrs. Franklin's rooster, for the swing set kids, it's for every retired couple who thought they had to choose between the light they liked and the fee they feared. Justice isn't loud. It's steady. Have you ever faced an HOA like this? Share your story in the comments. I read every one. And you never know who your experience will help. If you believe some fights are worth having fights for home for, dignity, for the right to fly a flag and swing on a porch hit, subscribe, and let's stand up together.